Work session coming up tonight on the 10th of March, and we have Sarah Pierce here with the City of Watertown Mayor, of course, to talk about the items that are on the agenda. And it's a lot of education, I think, but good stuff to learn because it could become a price tag for some people
Yes.
or for the city. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
The first one is the backstop, and you can explain it for us. But back when we've heard of some problems of where some sewage would back into some homes over on, is it the south side?
Yes.
So Butterfield Ave in that area. And so the city was talking about having a backstop program where something would be installed and it would keep that from happening to those homes. And you have more information on that tonight. And again, it's a learning session, right?
Correct. So a few months ago, as the public might recall, we had a work session regarding this. It would essentially be a backwater prevention device pilot program. So it would provide homeowners in the Western Outfall Sewer Basin with a reimbursement if they would move forward with installing one of these devices at their property. So there's a number of guidelines they would have to follow in order to be eligible for the program. And again, this is something that we're just discussing at this point. We haven't included it in the budget or figured out how we would fund it, but this is a more formal presentation that we'll be seeing tonight from our engineering department about the pilot program. And as you mentioned, it would prevent homes in that area from going through that situation where there would be the backup. It would relieve some pressure on the system, that sort of thing. So other communities I know have done this. I believe the city of Ogdensburg has done it, and it's been successful. So it's something that we're looking at to address the issues in that area of the city.
And you're hoping not to put that cost burden on to the property owner. You're hoping that if they find a contractor, they get it done, the city could reimburse them. You're looking at that.
Correct. So this would be, tonight you'll see a more formal presentation. You'll see the draft letter that would go out to homeowners, a brochure that would go out, basically just letting them know that this is an option available to them. Again, they'd have to follow a set of criteria. If they have, for example, a sump pump at their home, they'd have to remove that. There's a couple other things that they would have to do. They, of course, would have to hire somebody who is certified to do this kind of work, and the city would have to sign off on it. The work would be performed if everything was done correctly, and according to the guidelines, they would be reimbursed by the city.
Any cost estimate on all
I
that?
believe it's about in the neighborhood of $3,000 is that what the
For one of
typical
them?
cost would be for one of them.
Okay,
Yes.
how many homes are we talking?
So in that area, off the top of my head, I want to say in the area that's outlined for the pilot program, I want to say it's around 150, maybe 200 homes in that area. Could be a little north of that, but that's in that neighborhood of what we would be looking at.
So when you talk about city projects, when it deals with water, sewer, infrastructure, that's really a small cost.
Small cost,
overall.
but it could have a big benefit, of course, to the property owners, to the city overall. So it's something
Sure.
that I think the council will be looking at seriously.
Yeah, and I would imagine that people over on that side of the city like that there's some sort of discussion of a possible solution.
Yes.
Because it can be a miserable situation for them. Another thing that you'll be talking about tonight is lead and copper. The EPA, federal government changing, I would guess, what some minimum standards are. And so lead and copper in water pipes?
Yes, that's my understanding, is the EPA has kind of upped their regulations when it comes to those types of service lines, and the city will have to make sure that we're in compliance. Tonight we're going to hear about some options for moving forward with that. The issue, I think, at hand is whether the property owners pay for the replacement of those lines or the city pays for the replacement of those lines. We are going to need to have some further financial and legal analysis before we decide which way we're going to move forward. But basically, this is just going to be a discussion to bring the council up to speed on those more stringent guidelines from the EPA.
And again, the pipes are the ones that'll bring the water from the city infrastructure to the home.
To the property.
Under the property that's owned by the homeowner, right?
Correct.
Currently.
And so that's, as people will hear tonight, one of the things that we're going to talk about is what way do we move forward with this? Do we put the onus on the property owner to replace the pipe and have them incur that cost? Of course, that's nothing that a property owner wants to hear. It's kind of, would be to most people, I think, a surprise bill that would be fairly significant. Or do we change ownership of those lines so the city owns them and therefore the city is responsible for replacing them? I think one of the big things that we will hope for and hopefully hear more about is, are there going to be any dollars attached to this? As I mentioned, these are EPA guidelines that have become more stringent. So will there be any funding to hopefully alleviate some of the burden on the communities that are needing to move forward and address these issues, hopefully?
And the final one, the reservoir up in Thompson Park, drinking water reservoir. We know that there's a leak. There's been one for decades. It's quite a bit of a leak. And give us a little bit of what has been addressed so far. Then we'll talk about what you're going to learn tonight. But to this point, what has been done to try to solve that problem?
So as the public will recall, as you mentioned, a very significant leak, hundreds of thousands of gallons of treated water being expelled per day. So back about a year ago, the city approved bonding to be able to move forward with some repairs to it that hopefully would address the issue. We did complete those repairs, but at the end of last year, it was found that it did not address the issue completely, so there is still significant leakage happening there. Tonight, we will get an update from engineering, from the water department regarding what our next steps are. As the public will hear, there are several options, one of them being do nothing, let the water continue to leak. I believe another one of the options is going to be move forward with even more repairs that'll hopefully address the issue once and for all. And then, of course, there's the option of building a new reservoir, which would be a significant expense, of course.
What kind of things have been done to find out where the leak is, right? Because you guys had dive teams that went in. Did you ever figure out where it is exactly?
I don't think that they haven't isolated exactly where it is, I don't believe. And that's obviously what's led to the continued leaking that we're experiencing up there.
So don't do a thing, make some other slight repairs, but then if you get into replacing, I can't imagine, do you have any kind of price tag of what that could end up being?
I believe in the presentation we're going to see tonight, it's anywhere from about $2 million to $5 million, and that would not be including any sort of demolition costs, which would also be very significant.
Yeah, and it's an important project, right?
Yes, definitely.
And has anyone done the cost analysis of what you're losing in a day and for treated water?
Well, I think the argument has been made in the past that are we really losing anything because this water isn't going to be used anywhere, there's no market for it basically. But I think that you probably could put a value on what a gallon of treated water would cost the city. I don't know that number off the top of my head, what the cost would be of what we're losing, but I think you can look at it as definitely it is loss of something that the city is producing, the treated water.
Sure. Yeah, and if it
were to be,
if it weren't leaking and you were holding it, then eventually it would get used and bought, right?
Correct.
So there is the purchase is there if it's being stored, but if it's leaking, you're losing that availability of being sold. The work session tonight, 7 o'clock, Watertown City Hall at the Chambers, and open to the public, right?
Yes.
People can come. And is there privilege of the floor for that? There's not, right?
Not at work sessions.
Yeah, at work
so
sessions you can go and listen.
Come next week if you want to speak.
Yeah, but come and listen.
But come and listen.
And if you have questions, you can always do that at another time, but always can be there to listen to what the city is going to be talking about here tonight. Good to see you.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank you.